Greetings to everybody on this Monday morning, April 13th, 7:30 a.m. During the coronavirus lockdown, we're reaching out through cyberspace. Om Agnati Manandasyang Ganangana Salakya Chaksurun Miritam Yanatajmai Sri Gurave Namaha Sri Chaitanya Manobhistam Stapitam Yana Bhutare Sayam Rupa Karamayam Darati Swaparandikam Vandeham Siguru Siyata Parakamanam Shigurun Vaishnavam Sya Sirupam Sagatam Sahagana Raganatam Vitam Stam Sadevam Sadvaitam Savadutam Parijana Saitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Sri Radha Krishna Padan Sahagana Lalita Shivishakhan Vitam Sja Nama Om Vishnu Paraya Krishna Pastaya Bhutare Srimati Bhaktivedanta Swami Tinamane Namaste Saraswati Devi Gauravani Pacharine Nirvishesa Sunyavadi Praskita Desarharine Sri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shiva Sri Gaur Bhaktavinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. Good morning, Mala, Varsana, and those who will join us later. We're in Srimad Bhagavatam. These are our Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday Bhagavatam classes, which are online, live, at 7:30 in the morning, Mountain Daylight Time. So our verse today is the 21st verse in the first chapter, first canto of Srimad Bhagavatam. Kalim agatam agyayam, chetreshmin vaishnava vayam, asina digasatrena, katayam shakshana hare. Translation by Srila Prabhupada. Knowing well that the age of Kali has already begun, this is Sanaka, the head of the assembly of sages at Naimisharanya, speaking to Sutta Goswami. We are assembled here in this holy place, Naimisharanya, to hear at great length the transcendental message of Godhead, and in this way perform sacrifice. Srila Prabhupada's purport. The age of Kali is not at all suitable for self-realization, as was Satyuga, the golden age, or Treta Yuga, or even Dwapara Yuga, the silver and copper ages. For self-realization, the people in Satyuga, living a lifetime of 100,000 years, were able to perform prolonged meditation. And in Treta Yuga, when the duration of life was 10,000 years, self-realization was attained by performance of great sacrifice. And in the Dwapara Yuga, when the duration of life was 1,000 years, self-realization was attained by worship of the Lord. But in the Kali Yuga, the maximum duration of life being 100 years only, and that combined with various difficulties, the recommended process of self-realization is that of hearing and chanting of the holy name, fame, and pastimes of the Lord. The sages of Naimisharanya began this process in a place meant specifically for devotees of the Lord. They prepared themselves to hear the pastimes of the Lord over a period of 1,000 years. By the example of these sages, one should learn that regular hearing and recitation of the Bhagavatam is the only way for self-realization in this particular age. Other attempts are simply a waste of time, for they do not give any tangible results. Lord Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu preached this system of Bhagavad Dharma, and he recommended that all those who are born in India should take the responsibility of broadcasting the messages of Lord Krishna, primarily the message of Bhagavad Gita. And when one is well established in the teachings of Bhagavad Gita, he can take up the study of Srimad Bhagavatam for further enlightenment and self-realization. Morning, Sundari Priya and Govinda Day. When I went to India the first time, it was 1969, and I did not notice this at that time because I didn't have a context of being a devotee. And as you know, I met devotees in Australia, of all places, became a devotee. Came back to India for the second time, probably in 73. Then I noticed that Radhika Jewelers, Krishna Groceries, Sham Gold Shop, how Krishna consciousness is pervasive throughout India. You can't help but rise to a certain level of Krishna consciousness just walking down a bazaar, just walking through a marketplace, because Krishna, Govinda, Sham, Radha is everywhere. My best friend, Roshan Kanpur, he has a company in the garment district of Los Angeles called Radhika Imports, which is not at all atypical. So if you're born in India, Bharata Bhumi Te Janma, Janma means birth, Bharat Bhumi is the name for India. If you've taken birth in India, you get Krishna consciousness with your mother's milk. You get it in the cradle, especially if you had grandparents who would recite to you the narrations of the Mahabharata and Ramayana. You'd get it, it's just part of your birthright, part of your heritage. And you're meant to share that great treasure, that cultural, religious, and spiritual treasure. You're meant to share it with people all over the world. So, in the 60s, late 60s and 70s, when Prabhupada arrived as the ambassador of Indian culture, as the ambassador of Krishna consciousness, self-appointed, mind you, because there was no effort on the part of the government of India to systematically propagate Krishna consciousness. None. They didn't consider that was important. Nehru, in fact, was all for factories and industrialization. That was not necessarily the case with Gandhi, but Nehru was British educated, more a Westerner than an Indian, really. So he wanted India to become a developed country. And spreading the gospel of Bhagavad Gita and Krishna consciousness was not at all a priority for Nehru, nor for the Congress Party, for that matter. So they didn't have any plan for sharing their culture on a worldwide basis. Even the Gaudiya Math, the missionary society which Bhaktisiddhanta had established for that express purpose of spreading Lord Chaitanya's movement to every town and village of the world, didn't have any success overseas. And there were some elements there that criticized Prabhupada for striking off on his own to try to fulfill the mission of Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati. So I remember one time, Prabhupada said, I don't remember whether I was personally present or whether I heard it on a tape, but Prabhupada quoted the verse, Bharata Bhumite Janma Manusha Haila. Bharata Bhumite Janma Manusha Haila. Para Upakara. If you've taken birth and you have that rich culture, which is your heritage, as a result of having taken birth in India, then it's your duty. It's your duty to spread that, to share that. Imagine if you had the cure for AIDS, but you kept it to yourself. You only used it for you and your family or even your countrymen. Or the cure for cancer, and you didn't share it. It would be bordering on the criminal. So Krishna says, Janma karma medivyam evam yot yakva, tyakva deham pranarjanma neti mamiti sarjana. If you understand, that's all you have to do, really. He's God, we're his puppets. So there's not a lot we have to do to make our lives successful, except place ourselves in his hands. And we do that more effectively the more we know about the limitless power of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. So powerful is Krishna, in fact, that he says in the Bhagavad Gita, Janma Karma, if you just understand tatvata, not superficially, not from a book in the library, not from a scholar, but from a practicing devotee, the divine, transcendental, divya, Janma Karma, divyam, the transcendental nature of my appearance and activities. Janma Karma Evyovi. Chakpa Deham Pranarjanma Neti Mamiti Sarjana. When you leave this present body, you will not take another body. So that's better than curing cancer, that's better than curing AIDS. Curing cancer, curing AIDS just means you can drag out a few more years in this body. But then if your consciousness is karmatmaka, if it's not Krishna conscious, but if you're materialistic consciousness will then drag you to take another birth after leaving this present body. It stands to reason, right? There's nothing mystical about it. You have appetites, desires, ambitions towards enjoying this material, this phenomenal world. And so if you're still hankering in that way, if your conscience is still covered by fruitive mentality, then you're going to get a body in your next life which will be an instrument to fulfill your desires. What are we saying? It's not so much the Judeo-Christian concept of hell and fire and brimstone, punishment, being thrown in a lake of fire, but we create our own hell by mulling over, by mucking around in this material world. And thus we're doomed to perpetual birth and death on this wheel of samsara, birth, death, disease, and old age. So hearing about the pastimes, form, paraphernalia, the abode of Krishna from authorized sources is the antidote to repeated birth, death, disease, and his old age. There's no better knowledge. There's no better medicine. There's no better cure for what ails us than hearing about and chanting the glories of the Lord, the result of which is that we understand the transcendental nature behind Krishna's activities and pastimes. And although there are different ages and different prescriptions for self-realization for each and every age, it all comes down to one thing. Is understanding your source, understanding your creator, and getting in the middle of why he created you, the mission that he created you for. Being an instrument for his pleasure and not misappropriating, not shunting your body, your mind, your senses, and your God-given talents off on some other track, which is all self-centered. And when we say self-centered, we mean the self, the body, and the mind, as well as the extensions of the body and mind, which mean family, children, land that I was born in, country, some of the better amongst those who are materially tainted identify with the species, you see, and some of those who are even still better identify with all living beings, and they have empathy for the animals as well. But none of that is going to free you from repeated birth, death, and disease and old age. Only by understanding the transcendental nature and activities of Krishna can you get mukti, can you get liberation. And therefore it said, Kriti Adayato Vishnu. In the first age, there are 4 cosmic seasons, if you will, spring, summer, winter, fall, and then it resets. It all starts over again. Circular, cyclical. So in the first age, when people lived 100,000 years, dayato, meditation, was the means for perfection. But what are they meditating? They're meditating on Krishna. Dhyana Sharupena, Dhyavashita Tadgatena Manasa. The perfection of yoga is dhyan, is constant and unwavering meditation, Sharupa, the form of Krishna. Yata dipo nibatasto nenkateshopama yata jandira yunjata yogam atmanaha. In the Bhagavad Gita, Krishna says, who is perfect in yoga meditates upon me unwaveringly, like a lamp in a windless place, which doesn't flicker, it burns steadily. So he who is meditating upon the transcendental form and activities of Krishna without wavering, with steadiness, that is who is a true yogi. And with a lifetime of 100,000 years, you had a lot of opportunity to practice. Then in the second age, Tretiya Jata Makaya, big sacrifices. Countrywide sacrifices. The king would marshal all of the workers to build the sacrificial arena and guest houses for all the arriving dignitaries. They would take their crops and they would prepare them as an offering to the Lord. They would take tons and tons of butter and make ghee out of it for shaha, for doing shaha, for ladling ghee on the sacrificial fire. Gold and silver would be there to pay the Brahmins who would chant so expertly their mantras, Rig, Yajur, Veda, and Atharva. So expert were the Brahmins in chanting mantras that they could start the sacrificial fire by mantra without matches or lighter. They could bring an old animal back to life just to prove the efficacy of the mantras and the bona fides of the chanter. So when it says Makaya, it means it was a whole countrywide effort. Everybody was involved, the Sudras, the Vaishyas, the kings, the Brahmins. And as a result, if the sacrifice was done properly with the right ingredients, the right level of devotion, the right chanting by the mantras with the perfect intonation, if the king was himself Nara Dev, a representative of God, then what would happen? Vishnu or Krishna would arrive riding on the back of Garuda to receive the oblations. So again, same goal as in the previous age. Same goal is to become Krishna conscious. And then in the third age, when people lived only 1,000 years, the Dwarpa age, big temple worship was there. And you go to the temple, you worship the deity. In those days, there wasn't private property. For hundreds of acres surrounding each and every temple, the land was deeded to Krishna, Gopal, Balaji, Venkateshwara, Srinivas. So it was owned by the deity. People would grow their crops and everything would be offered to the deity and then shared communally. So the deity was Krishna. Krishna in Satyuga, Krishna in Treta Yuga, Krishna in Dwarpa Yuga. So big surprise. In Kali Yuga, where people only live 100 years and spirituality is almost nil, people are lazy for spiritual life, they're short-lived, they only live 100 years at best. Right now, our elderly population is even being further decimated, as if all the ills from consuming animal flesh, high cholesterol, heart disease, as if that wasn't enough, now that vulnerable elderly population is just being mowed down like a fire through dry grass or a sickle through weeds. It is said that those who are most at risk from the virus are those whose health is already compromised by the bad habits that our society encourages and indulges. So we're already short-lived just having taken birth in Kali Yuga. And then if you smoke and you drink and you eat meat, you're even going to be more short-lived. And then if you're habituated to all of those things, then you're a prime target for Mr. Corona-G. So this is not the most ideal age for self-realization, but the goal is still the same. Kritiya Dayato Vishnu, meditation in Satyuga. Tritiya Jata Makaya, big sacrifices in the next age. The previous age to this one, the Bronze Age, Dwarpa Age, temple worship, huge, gorgeous, elaborate temple worship. And in this age, Kalo Tad Hari Kirtana, just chant Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hari Hari, Hari Rama, Rama Rama, Hari Hari. And if you were attentive when I read the purport, in the purport, Prabhupada pretty much equates reading and hearing Srimad Bhagavatam with chanting. I mean, we say chanting Hare Krishna, which refers to japa and Sankirtan. But equivalent is reading and chanting. It's not a substitute, but it's a complement. It's equivalent. It has parity. Reading and chanting the Srimad Bhagavatam under the guidance of a bona fide spiritual master. One can achieve perfection in the Kali Yuga just in the same way that one achieved perfection in previous ages, by putting Krishna in the center and becoming Krishna conscious. Now I'm just going to take a moment here to read what Hanuman said to Bhima. They had an encounter in the Himalayas during the course of the Mahabharata. And after Bhima recognized Hanuman as none other than his brother, he had one question, really. He said, describe to me the passage of the Yugas. I'm very curious about that. And so here's a couple of paragraphs where Hanuman describes the 4 Yugas to his brother from the wind god, Bhima. I may throw a little more light. Hanuman said, that Yuga is called golden or Krita when one eternal religion was extant. And in that best of yugas, the first yuga, everyone had religious perfection. and therefore there was no need of religious acts. And then virtue knew no deterioration. Virtue, austerity, cleanliness, mercy, austerity. Anyway, there were 4 pillars, and they were all 4 intact in the first yuga. I said, nor did people decrease. It is for this that this age is called Krita. Krita means perfect. But in time, the yuga had come to be considered as an inferior one, and there was no buying and selling, and there was no manual labor, and then the necessities of life were obtained by only being thought of. So in this age, imagine if you wanted something, you just think of it, it would mystically appear before you. And the only merit was in renouncing the world, because people didn't come here to stay. They came here almost as if they'd gone through the wrong door or made a wrong turn. And as soon as they realized they were in the wrong place, they made all effort, all exertion to get out again. And so in the Krita Yuga age, there were very, very few people that ever took rebirth. There were no cities, there was no trade, there was no money, there was no commerce, there were no iPads, there were no big screen TVs. It was all forested, and there were only ashrams and hermitages of the sages. So people didn't dally, they didn't linger, they just got here, they realized, hey, I'm a spirit, what am I doing in this material world? They turned around and got back out as soon as they could. And so during that yuga, there was neither disease nor decay of the senses. There was no malice, no pride, no hypocrisy, no discord, no ill will, no cunning, no fear, no misery, no envy, nor covetousness. And it says, for this age, the prime refuge of yogis, and the whole world population was yogis at the time, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Sri Krishna, was attainable by all. So 100% of the population at that time became Krishna conscious, turned around and got out. As quickly as they got in, they got out. Back to home, back to Godhead. Then Hanuman describes the second age, the Treta Yuga age. In this age, sacrifices were introduced and virtue decreased by 1/4. And men practiced truth and devoted themselves to religion and religious rites. And from then, sacrifices and various religious performances came into being. And in this yuga, people began to devise means for the attainment of the object. And they attained it through acts and through gifts. They're no longer getting what they wanted just by thinking of it. And they never deviate from virtue. And they are devoted to asceticism and bestow of gifts. The 4 orders, intellectual, warrior, mercantile men, and workers, came into being at this time, and they all followed their respective duties, and they performed their rites. And the Bhagavad Gita says, Yata pravitir bhutanam yena sababinam shokamanatam abhyacha siddhim vedanti manavaha. So in the first age, everybody was a yoga. That was their duty. That was their dharma. But in the second age, human society began to be divided into 4 different divisions of labor called ashram according to their talents and their aptitudes. But whether you're an intellectual, a warrior, a mercantile, or a laborer, by working for the satisfaction of the Lord, you achieve perfection in your life. Now, the next age is called Dwarpa. This is the Bronze Age. And again, religion is decreased by another 25%. And the Vedas in the Dwarpa age began to be divided into 4 parts. Some sages learned all 4 Vedas, some learned 3 Vedas, some learned 2 Vedas, some learned 1 Veda, and many of them didn't know any of the Vedas. So when the scriptures became thus divided, then acts became multiplied. There became many, many, many recommendations for spirituality, and it got confusing. That's one of the reasons why right in the 3rd verse, I think it is the 3rd verse or the 5th verse of the Srimad Bhagavatam, Vyasadeva says, Burini Burini Kamani Sotya Vyanavi Atasa Dhyataratsam Samudira Bruhi Badraya Bhutanam Yaratmasu Pashidade. the sages at Naimisharanya asked Sutta Goswami, or maybe it was Parikshit asking Sukadeva Goswami, there's so many scriptures now. There's so many duties. You could not even begin to do all these duties in one lifetime. It's so confusing. It's so daunting. Can you, if this is Sukadeva or if it's Sutta Goswami, can you burini sotivya atam saram jayatsaram? Can you give us the essence? Can you give us that one thing doing which all other duties will be performed, all other gods and demigods will be propitiated, and we'll become purified in heart and go back to home, back to Godhead. And that, of course, is Krishna consciousness. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. So it continues here describing the previous age. Acts become multiplied. Scriptures become multiplied. Everything becomes unlimitedly confusing. And largely influenced by passion, people engage in asceticism and gifts. And from their incapacity to study the entire Veda, it becomes divided. And in consequence of the intellect having decreased, few are established in truth. So the Vedas become divided, they become more and more complicated, and at the same time people are waning in terms of their lifespan and their intellectual capacity. So when people fall off from truth, then they become subject to various diseases. Isn't that interesting? That it is a departure from truth that makes you vulnerable to various diseases. And then, having become thus debilitated, says then lust, and then natural calamities ensue. And inflicted with these, people betake themselves to penances. So they're trying to counteract these shortcomings. And afflicted with these people, and some celebrate sacrifices desiring to enjoy the good things of life or attain heaven. On the coming of the Dwapara Yuga, men become degenerate in consequence of impiety. And then lastly, Hanuman describes the present Iron Age, Kali Yuga, quarrel and hypocrisy, the winter season of the cosmos. Only 1/4, 25%, of virtue remains. In the beginning of this age, the Vedas and the institutes and virtue and sacrifices and religious observances all fall into disuse. And then reign disease and lassitude and anger and other deformities and natural calamities, anguish, fear of scarcity. And as the yugas wane, virtue dwindles, and as virtue dwindles away, creatures degenerate. As creatures degenerate, their natures undergo deterioration, and the religious acts performed at the waning of the yugas produce contrary results. Now, I could say a few things about that, but I'm not going to ruffle any feathers. So it doesn't sound very good. It's not a pretty picture of the current age. But the good news is that considering all of our short-livedness, our waning intellect, the myriad of scriptures and contradictions contained therein, the Lord has just made it real simple. Self-realization for dummies. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. And along with that, exactly what you and I are doing right now. Nashta Pareshu Bhadresu, Nitya Bhagavata Sevaya, Bhagavati Uttamashoki, Bhaktir Bhavati Naistiki. Regularly hearing and reciting Srimad Bhagavatam, just as we're doing right now. The Srimad Bhagavatam is, in fact, the spiritual world. You cannot listen and recite and discuss the Srimad Bhagavatam without the spiritual world manifesting itself gradually before you. Now, from the description of Kali Yuga that we got from Hanuman, there's a lot of bad men. In the Treta Yuga, there were no bad men, and probably in the Satya Yuga, there were no bad men. In the Treta Yuga, no bad men. In the Dwapara Yuga began to be maybe half and half. In Kali Yuga, it's like overwhelmingly bad men. So the process for self-realization has to be something that can be practiced by bad men, because after all, Krishna wants us all to be corrigible up to the path, the level of perfection. Krishna doesn't give us something which is beyond our capability. Of course, whether we're willing or not, that's another issue. You can lead a horse to water, but you can't make him drink. But Krishna is going to give us that prescription, that process, which is doable, which is practical in this age. So basically, chanting Hare Krishna on a regular daily basis, hearing and reciting Srimad Bhagavatam, and taking sumptuous vegetarian food which is offered to the Lord. Now in the Bhagavad Gita, there are 4 types of bad men described. Namam duskritino mudha, prapadyate naradam, maya paritigaram, asharam bhavam asritaham. Namam duskrino mudha, prapadyate naradamaha. There are those who are lowest among men who will never surrender to a higher authority. They'll never acknowledge that there's any controller above themselves. Their view is asatyam apratishtam te. There's no basis for the creation. There's no intelligent designer. It just happened to be here, so go for it. It's like those land rushes when I was a kid in the black and white TV. I remember seeing the land rushes. It would be in Oklahoma or Missouri. And there would be all the settlers would be there with their horses. There would be a line, and someone would shoot a gun or wave a flag, and everyone would boom, 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 and then they just rode out and picked a nice valley with a river running through it, the ones with the fastest horses, and they would set some piles up of rock there, and one of them would stay there with a gun to ward everyone else off, and someone else there would be an official government guy who would arrive, and they'd write something, and they'd put their X on a piece of paper, and then they would own the land. It was just there. No thought that God created the land. God owns the land. The land is meant for God's enjoyment. And you actually cannot take ownership of that land because you can't stay. So this is the mentality, asatyam apratishtam te jagadaho, of those who will never surrender to the Lord, not at home, but maya parita jnanam. Then there are those whose knowledge is stolen by illusion. They're well-educated, they've got a BA from a reputable university, maybe a further studies, MA or PhD. And yet, although they have a lot of knowledge, they have a lot of facts, they have a degree and a diploma indicating that they've crammed things into their head for 4, 6, or 8 years, still, some or other, Krishna eludes them. He eludes them. Their knowledge has been stolen by illusion. Why is that said? Because Sarvasya Chamaridi Shanavishra, Krishna says, I'm seated in the heart of all living beings. From me come knowledge, remembrance, and forgetfulness. So if you went to university and you studied and you had a good brain and you got good grades and you got a degree and then you went on, that knowledge, that ability to remember is Krishna, the all-powerful Lord, in your heart, blessing you. And the goal of knowledge should be Vedascha sarvaya hameva vedo vedanta krit veda ved evachaham. Ultimately, knowledge should lead one higher and higher and higher, ultimately to the lotus feet of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. But they've taken what God gives them and they're using it only for self-aggrandizement, or for their family, or for their country, or even for their species. And so that means that their knowledge is stolen by illusion. So anyway, the prescription of the age chanting Hare Krishna is such that even bad men can, not routinely, not normally, but bad men can be converted up to the highest level of perfection. And that's why it is said in the Bhagavatam by Narada Muni, Tvam api adabra sutta vishutam vibhu samyapya ena viram viduchitam prakyahi duho mahodari tatmanam samklesha nirvanam usanti nanyata. Please, therefore, describe the Almighty Lord's activities, which you have learned by your vast knowledge of the Vedas, for that will satisfy the hankerings of great learned men, and at the same time mitigate the miseries of the masses of common people who are always suffering from material pangs. Indeed, there is no way to get out of such miseries. So what's an example of a common person who is rehabilitated by the simple practice of chanting, taking prasadam, and associating with devotees? The most exalted, Narada Muni. Narada Muni is mentioned in the Bhagavad Gita by Lord Krishna as Krishna's representation among the sages. But did you know that in his previous life, Narada Muni was not a bad man, but he was in a bad situation. He was abandoned by his father, orphaned when his mother was bit by a snake at the age of 5, and left to his own devices. Fortunately, he happened upon an ashram of saints and sages, associated with them throughout the rainy season. Tatanvaham Krishna Katha Pragayatam Manugrahena Shinvatam Manohari. He heard the Katha. He eavesdrops on their discussions about the Srimad Bhagavatam and about their chanting. And as a result, he developed an attachment and an attraction for hearing about the Supreme Personality of Godhead. So here is a typical example of an unfortunate person in the age of Kali, the worst age, the age of quarrel and hypocrisy, and he becomes transformed up to the point where he's the greatest of all the sages, with the ability to travel at will throughout the material and spiritual world. So therefore, when Narada Muni asserts that hearing and chanting, taking prasadam, reciting the Bhagavatam is good for those bad people in the Kali Yuga, he's speaking from personal experience. Prabhupada confirms that. He says here, Sri Narada Muni from practical experience definitely asserts that the prime solution of all problems of material work is to broadcast very widely the transcendental glories of the Supreme Lord. Oh, and this reminds me of the story I started off to, that it is said that if you took birth in India, your duty is to spread the glories of the Lord all over the world. So at the time Prabhupada came to America in 1965, there were Indians in America. There was a wave of immigration of Indians to America, but the last thing on their mind was spreading the message of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. They were aping the Americans. They wanted to be like the Americans, and they wanted to exploit material nature on the same level as the Americans. And so they were coming to America to get degrees in schools of America, to become engineers and so on and so forth. So amongst all of those, there was one Swami who was following the orders of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu and Lord Krishna to be an ambassador overseas. So Prabhupada said one time, and like I said, I don't know, I don't remember whether I was in the room with him or whether I was just listening to a tape. He said, "This is the duty of all Indians." And then he said, "Well, at least there's one Indian doing it." Which was the sad truth at that time. However, Prabhupada was like a touchstone. He went back to India with his white dancing elephants, made an impression. And now, even in America, there are temples in every major city, restaurants and farms, and the majority of those are managed by people of Indian birth who are now carrying the banner of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. These are the cream of the Indian society. I don't know if you've heard of IIT, India Institute of Technology, but it's like the Harvard multiplied 10 times over. And many of these ISKCON preachers, both in India and in other parts of the world, in America, they are the cream of the cream. They are graduates of IIT. And had they gone ahead to pursue karmic material desires, they would be earning 6-figure salaries even in India. But they decided to follow the orders of their Creator, their loving Father, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, being inspired by his bona fide representative, Srila Prabhupada, to be ambassadors of Krishna consciousness all over the world. So in 1965, there was only one. But now, in 2020, there are hundreds, if not thousands, of Indian-bodied preachers all over the world. Haribol, Sri Krishna Sankirtan, Ki Jai. And Narada Muni, speaking from personal experience, he says, he talks about good and bad men. So Naraji advises Vyasadeva to broadcast the transcendental knowledge of God in terms of the vast Vedic knowledge which he had already attained. And this knowledge is so powerful that it not only attracts the intelligent class of men, but it also removes the unwanted elements from the lives of people who are unfortunates in this age of Kali. Another verse, Anarto Pashamam Shakshad, Bhakti Yogam and Hokshada, Loga Sajanato Vidbhag, Chakri Satpada Samitam. The material miseries of the living entity, which are superfluous to him, can be directly mitigated by the linking process of devotional service. But the mass of people do not know this, and therefore the learned Vyasadeva compiled this Vedic literature, which is in relation to the supreme truth. Prabhupada says here, Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu taught that the most practical spiritual path for the mass of people, talk about Narada Muni and practical experience, when I review my life, there is not a single thing that I do from the moment that I wake in the morning to the moment that I go to sleep at night that is not inspired and taught by my guru, Srila Prabhupada. There isn't a single thing that I do on a day-to-day basis that is not connected with what Prabhupada wants us to do. Of course, I have lapses and all, but basically, my life is dedicated to serving Prabhupada. And had I not intersected with Prabhupada, had Prabhupada not taken the trouble to come to the Western countries, there isn't a single element of my life which would be as it is now. It would all be misdirected. And so a total overhaul in the individual lives is effected through the agency of a pure devotee and using the tools of the great Mahamantra, the names of the Lord, and the incomparable scripture, the Srimad Bhagavatam itself. And so essential and so important is this message, and so healing is it, and so effective it is in renovating the ills of this degraded age, that Krishna himself came down as an avatar for this particular age in order to propagate the chanting of Krishna consciousness, chanting of Hare Krishna, the recitation of Srimad Bhagavatam. In the Bhagavatam itself, 11th canto, says, 10th canto, Krishna Varna Titsa Krishnam Sango Panga Para Yaga Sankirtana Yajanti Pishu Medishaham. It is said, in this age of Kali, people who are endowed with sufficient intelligence, Yadanti Pishu Medisha, will worship the Lord who is accompanied by his associates by performance of Sankirtana Yagna. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Other sacrifices prescribed in the Vedic literatures are not easy to perform in this age of Kali, but the chanting sacrifice is easy and sublime for all purposes, as mentioned by Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. And my last example of how effective Krishna consciousness is in the age of Kali, Narada Muni says, not only for those who are unfortunate and low-born, but also for those who are gifted with intellectual capacity, who are gifted with mental brilliance. If they are fortunate enough to intersect a pure devotee of the Lord, they also will be corrigible up to the standard of perfection. So one such Maya Aparita Jnana was Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya. He lived in Puri. He had hundreds and hundreds of disciples who followed him because of his erudition, because of his articulation, And as we mentioned, the Vedas have been divided, and there are hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of different paths and recommendations. And he knew how to expound on all of them. The problem is that he's just propagating, he's just multiplying the confusion. Of course, sure, he is adulated, he is respected for his vast and encyclopedic knowledge, but the result of his teachings is nil, especially in this age of Kali, because nobody can follow him. He's just presenting himself as an object of reverence, but not speaking in such a way as to have any practical use in this Kali Yuga age, and not to benefit any member of the general population. So Sarvabhauma Acharya, when Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu arrived originally in Jagannath Puri, he went before the Jagannath deity. He had run before his entourage and appeared before Jagannath and fainted. Sarvabhauma Acharya saw this young, gorgeous, brilliant sannyasi fainted out on the floor. He said, "Take him to my house." What his idea was that this is a sentimentalist. He's not rooted in philosophy and erudition and knowledge. In those days, that's what a Swami, that's what a sannyasi did. They simply studied and memorized, and they were able to recite all the different Vedic conjunctions, thus compounding the confusion that was already there. So Sarvabhauma Acharya wanted to bring him into his fold, very kindly, generously, had him taken to his home. And when Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu regained consciousness, Sarvabhauma offered to tutor him. He offered to be his personal tutor in the Vedas. Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu was very humble, so he agreed. For 7 days, Sarvabhauma Acharya expounded upon the Vedas and went this way and that way and followed this alleyway and followed that alleyway and pulled out this arcane scripture and referenced this Purana and all. Just brilliant, dazzling intellectual prowess. But Lord Chaitanya didn't respond in any way, didn't nod, didn't acknowledge anything, just sat there. And after 7 days, Sarvabhauma Acharya said, "Did you understand the Vedas as I described them?" And Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu said, "But you didn't describe the Vedas. You didn't, it's all indirect. It's all about you. It's all about showing off. It's showbottlism." And Sarvabhauma said, "What do you mean?" And Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, who is Krishna himself, who is brilliant like the sun, who at 16 years old had defeated the greatest scholar in all of India back in Bengal, Keshav Kashmiri, and who later adopted the process of chanting Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Ram Hare. He explained to Sarvabhauma Acharya that in this age of Kali, intellectual pursuit, mental speculation, it may have been effective in a previous age when people had more keen intellects and longer life, but it is more or less a waste of time in this current age to be a Vedic scholar, coupled with the fact that most of the Vedas are lost anyway. He said, the essence of the Vedas, according to the Bhagavad Gita, according to all Puranas and all scriptures, is to become Krishna conscious. Bahuram Jamanamate, Ganamam Prapadyate. And Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu revealed the next day to Sarvabhauma Acharya that so essential is this teaching and so essential is this practice. In fact, it's the only method of redemption in this particular age. It is so essential that Lord Chaitanya revealed himself to Sarvabhauma Acharya as none other than Krishna himself, descended not in his blackish form like the color of a monsoon cloud during the rainy, but in his golden form, as Gauranga, as the golden avatar, in order to propagate and to make this great jewel of liberation and love of God available to the people in general. Sarvabhauma Acharya abandoned his mental speculation and he full-heartedly prostrated himself at the lotus feet of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. It is said that he wrote 100 verses in praise of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. But when he showed them to Lord Chaitanya destroyed them. Because in his role as Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, a renunciate, he was not comfortable with people writing poetry in praise of him. But some or other, 2 of those verses were saved. And here is one verse that this former Mayaparita Ganam, this erudite, puffed-up scholar, whose knowledge had been stolen by illusion, and thus returned to him in its most essential, concise form by Krishna in the form of Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. Here is the one verse that survives from Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya's devotional poetry just after having been converted. And we'll end this evening's session by reciting and translating this verse. Vairagya Bija Nija Bhakti Yoga Shikshartam Eka Purusha Paranam Sri Krishna Chaitanya Sarira Dari Kripambudir Yastam Aham Babadye. Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya wrote, "Let me take shelter of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Sri Krishna, who has descended in the form of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu to teach the masses of people in the age of Kali real knowledge, the real thing of devotional service to Krishna, and detachment from whatever, including mental speculation, which does not foster Krishna consciousness. He has descended because he is an ocean of transcendental mercy. Let us surrender unto his lotus feet." Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu ki jai. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. We'll be back with you tomorrow and Wednesday at 7:30 a.m. for more hearing and recitation and discussing of the great transcendental epic work of Vyasadeva, the Srimad Bhagavatam. Thank you so much for being with us this Monday morning, April 13th, during the lockdown. Hare Krishna.